In the early morning on May 29, 1914, the ocean liner RMS Empress of Ireland steamed through the dense fog on the St. Lawrence River. On board were 1,477 people. They were immigrants, vacationers, and crew members headed for Liverpool. The ocean liner collided with the Norwegian cargo ship Storstad. In just 14 minutes, the once great ocean liner would sink below the waves of the St. Lawrence, taking over 1,000 lives with her. The Empress of Ireland and her sister ship, Empress of Britain, were commissioned by the Canadian Pacific Steamship Company. The company began taking passengers across the Atlantic in 1903. The company acquired 3 ships from the Beaver Line: Lake Champlain, Lake Erie, and Lake Manitoba. These ships traveled back and forth from Liverpool to Montreal. The new line was a big success. The company commissioned 2 brand new ocean liners, Empress of Ireland and Empress of Britain. They were built by Fairfield Shipbuilding and Engineering on the River Clyde in Glasgow, Scotland. They were built side by side and were almost identical in appearance. Her keel was laid on April 10, 1905. Empress of Ireland was 570 feet long and 65.7 feet wide, with a depth of 36.7 feet. Her internal volume was 14,191 gross registered tons. She had 2 masts and 2 funnels, 2 4-blade screw propellers, which were powered by 2 quadruple expansion steam engines, making 3,168 nominal horsepower, giving her a top speed of around 18 knots. Her passenger capacity was 1,542, 310 first class, 468 second class, 494 third class, and 270 steerage. Her crew numbered at 373. Empress of Ireland was launched on January 27, 1906. She had a double bottom hull, 10 watertight bulkheads going from the hull to 3 decks above the waterline, separating the hull into 11 compartments with 24 watertight doors. The watertight doors were not electric. Every door had to be closed manually with a hand crank, which could be done in a matter of minutes. She could stay afloat with up to 2 adjacent compartments flooded. Electric watertight doors were available when the Empress of Ireland was under construction, but the manual doors were chosen. Electric doors could be closed with the flick of a switch in a matter of seconds, blocking off each compartment. In an emergency situation, the extra time would mean everything. Empress of Ireland set off from Liverpool to Quebec City on her maiden voyage on June 29, 1906. She stopped in Moville, Ireland to pick up immigrants ready to start a new life in Canada. At the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, Empress of Ireland picked up a river pilot to guide the ship safely to her final destination, as well as Canadian Pacific Railway employees to help passengers get tickets to make it to their final destination by rail. Canadian immigration, custom officials, and doctors also boarded to check documents, inspect luggage, and check for any diseases. They arrived safely, and after 6 days, Empress of Ireland made the return trip to Liverpool. The Empress of Ireland was a big success. In winter from November to April, she traveled from Liverpool to Halifax or St. John, due to the St. Lawrence River being frozen over. From May to October, she traveled to Quebec City. After Titanic hit an iceberg and sank in the Atlantic on the night of April 14, 1912, Empress of Ireland's lifeboats were updated. Her 16 wooden lifeboats were replaced with 16 steel lifeboats. She also had 26 wooden collapsible lifeboats added. She now had enough lifeboats for 1,686 people, more than enough for her 1,542 passenger capacity. In 1913, a Marconi wireless telegraph was added. In May 1914, Henry Kendall was appointed captain of the Empress of Ireland. He had some notable events happen earlier in his life. He survived a shipwreck off the Newfoundland coast in 1900. He worked with Guglielmo Marconi on his ship-to-shore wireless telegraph. In 1910, as captain of the SS Montrose, he helped in the capture of the infamous murderer, Dr. Hawley Harvey Crippen. Captain Kendall recognized Dr. Crippen and his mistress, Ethel Neville. On board the Montrose, he had the radio operator radio back to shore, alerting Scotland Yard that Dr. Crippen and his mistress were on board. The faster White Star liner SS Laurentic set off with Chief Inspector Walter Dew on board. Inspector Dew reached the St. Lawrence River before the Montrose. He boarded disguised as a river pilot and arrested Dr. Crippen and his mistress. It was the first time a radio was used to help capture a criminal. RMS Empress of Ireland set off on her final voyage on May 28, 1914. It was Captain Henry Kendall's first crossing as captain of the Empress of Ireland, after his promotion earlier that month. The ocean liner left Quebec City at 4:30 p.m., carrying 1,057 passengers and 420 crew. 1,477 people on board. They were from all walks of life, unaware that they were on board one of the most tragic and deadliest journeys in maritime history. On board were members of the Salvation Army and their families, heading to the 3rd International Salvation Army Congress in London. Their party was around 170 people. The famous actors Lawrence Irving and his wife Mabel Hackney were traveling first class. They had just gave their last performance at the Walker Theatre in Winnipeg. The rest of their troupe could not make the return trip in time, so they returned on another ship, White Star's Titanic, ultimately saving their lives. Sir Henry Seton Carr, former member of the British House of Commons, was also traveling first class, returning home from a hunting trip. Henry Lyman, head of the largest pharmaceutical company in Canada, and his wife were on board heading to Europe for their honeymoon. There were only 87 passengers booked for first class, 253 passengers traveling in second class, and 717 passengers in third class. The river pilot helped the Empress of Ireland make it safely to Pontypridd. He exited the ship and her crew continued on. Meanwhile, the Norwegian collier Storstad, loaded with over 10,000 tons of coal, was heading towards Empress of Ireland to pick up the river pilot. A little after 1:30 a.m., a lookout on board Empress of Ireland spotted a ship off on the starboard side, around 6 miles away. The Storstad likewise spotted the liner off in the distance. Empress of Ireland altered course slightly, planning to pass starboard to starboard. The weather was clear, but soon a thick fog rolled in. Captain Kendall ordered the ship full astern and gave 3 short blasts, alerting that they were reversing. Storstad replied with 1 long blast. The captain ordered full to stop and gave 2 more blasts, so the incoming ship knew that they were dead in the water. Storstad's crew believed the incoming ship's lights changed course. They believed the ship was changing course to pass port to port. They changed direction to port and stopped their engines. They restarted their engines after they thought the current would steer them into the approaching ship. Captain Kendall spotted the cargo ship approaching out of the fog and ordered full speed ahead, but it was too late. Storstad slammed into the Empress of Ireland's starboard side between her funnels. Storstad's bow was slowly pulled from the liner's starboard side. A large gash now opened up, allowing water to flood in. Captain Kendall yelled in a megaphone for the Storstad to keep full speed ahead, to plug the hole, but she drifted away with the current. Water flooded the ship at around 60,000 gallons a second. There was no time to shut the watertight doors. Water was already flooding in, and many portholes were open, allowing more water, flooding the passenger cabins and killing many who were asleep. Passengers and crew in the lower decks were trapped and drowning. In the upper decks, many were woken up by the impact and rushed on deck. The lifeboats were readied, but the ship began listing heavily to starboard, making it impossible to launch the lifeboats on the port side. The lifeboats just crashed into the side of the ship when lowered, throwing the passengers into the cold, dark water. 5 lifeboats on the starboard side were successfully launched, but the 6th and 7th were capsized while lowering. Ronald Ferguson, chief wireless operator, managed to send an SOS signal, alerting other ships of their situation. The boilers were flooded, cutting the power, sending the ship into complete darkness. The list got worse and worse, making it extremely difficult to make it up on deck. People were thrown into the water or trapped below the decks. After just 10 minutes, the ship rolled to her starboard side. Hundreds of people climbed onto the side of the ship. They were met with a horrible sight. People still inside the ship tried to escape through the open portholes. Some managed to escape, but the portholes were not very wide, and many were trapped as the water flooded in, drowning all who could not escape. The ship sat there for a few minutes. People believed that the ship had hit bottom, but just 14 minutes after the collision, shortly after 2:10 a.m., the bow rose slightly, and the ship sank as the fog cleared. They had just 14 minutes for 1,477 people to try and escape from across 7 different decks. The crew of the Storstad could hear the screaming and saw people in the water. They lowered their lifeboats and pulled as many people from the icy waters as they could. Captain Kendall was thrown from the bridge into the water. He was later picked up in a lifeboat. He continued rescue operations until the lifeboat could find no more survivors. He was eventually brought on board the Storstad, where he confronted the Storstad's captain, saying, "You have just sunk my ship." 1,012 people were killed in the sinking, or died in the frigid waters. There were 465 survivors. Out of 138 children, only 4 survived. 41 women, 172 men, and 248 crew members. The famous passengers we spoke of earlier, actors Lawrence Irving and his wife Mabel Hackney, were killed, along with Sir Henry Stanton Carr, Henry Lyman, and his wife. All but 8 of the Salvation Army members were killed. The pilot boat Eureka was the first ship to arrive, rescuing around 150 survivors. Lady Evelyn arrived. There were no more survivors in the water, but she collected 133 bodies and around 200 survivors that were brought on board the Storstad. Storstad was able to continue under her own steam to Quebec. An inquiry was held in Quebec, starting on June 16, 1914. It was found that the Storstad was to blame for the collision, since Storstad had changed course. The Storstad's chief officer was blamed for altering his course in fog and not waking the captain. The cause of the quick sinking was attributed to the location of the collision, the failure to close the watertight doors. The longitudinal bulkheads worsened the list by inhibiting cross-flooding. A contributing factor was the portholes being left open, allowing water to flood in. Canadian Pacific Railway won a court case against the owners of Storstad for $2 million. Storstad was seized and sold for $175,000. The Empress of Ireland was one of the deadliest sinkings in history. She was only 5 miles from shore, but still 1,012 people were killed. The sinking happened so fast, making it impossible for many to escape. I want to thank you all for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you on the next. Peace.